Religious persecution in China. McConnell blocks $2,000 relief payments. More Fauci hypocrisy. Negligent mainstream media. And finally, judge orders journalists to pay Planned Parenthood $13.6 million. All this and more on this episode of The Federalist Files. Thank you everybody for tuning in. This is going to be a current event video. I'm going to have a lot of information. I'm pretty jacked up. We have a lot of current events going on right now. One of them being a Missouri senator saying he is going to pretty much invoke the 12th Amendment. He's going to challenge the electoral votes in Pennsylvania as well as some of the other states, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin. So this was something that was being told. This was kind of going. We had a lot of legislators walking in and out of the White House. So this seemed like something that was planned out, but this individual, the Missouri senator, came out straight up and said that that he will be doing this. He will be challenging the vote. Now, I don't really know if the constitutionality, if this is going to be supported in the Supreme Court, his challenge. What's his name? I'm trying to find him. Hawley. So, Hawley. Josh Hawley, Republican from Missouri. There was also some talks going on that Tommy Tuberville was also going to do this. Tommy Tuberville just got elected as I think he's also a senator in Alabama. I think Alabama, where Jeff Sessions was running. Yeah, it was Alabama. He beat him out. And apparently there's these background, according to thehill.com, Mitch McConnell was saying not to challenge the results, was trying to warn people not to do so. There are some Republicans still that are kind of MAGA Republicans. I think that's what the new alliance of the party is going to become, even if Trump ends up losing in this January 6th challenge of the electoral votes when Mike Pence goes through to count them. His powers as the president of Senate, if he decides to challenge them. Then we'll see where it goes from there. Constitutionally, I don't know if this has really ever been practiced before. I've covered it a little bit now. So what we're having rumblings from the Republican Party. Some of the people, kind of swampy Republicans, are saying that they're just going to accept the results because they're just worried about getting elected again. They don't really care about the security of our elections. And Mitch McConnell also has some deep ties with China in his family. Maybe I'll get to that over this weekend. This weekend I'm going to have a huge show, so everyone stay tuned for that. I'm going to have a lot of information that just recently came out with Pennsylvania. I'm looking more into other information related to this January 6th thing that they're going to be going for. I think they're going to try to invoke the 12th Amendment. But what I have so far here, and this is the COVID relief bill that Trump signed. I want to report on this first. I thought it was more imperative to do so. Now, Trump signed. I have this article out of the Daily Wire, and it's titled "Trump to Use Impoundment Act to Gut Wasteful Spending, Try to Boost Stimulus Checks." So, if anyone didn't know, I believe it was Sunday. Trump ended up signing through this COVID bill, but he did it on certain conditions, kind of almost like a good faith condition that he set up, or he's stating now on Twitter because he's tweeting it. This Impoundment Control Act. So President Trump announced on Sunday evening that he was going to sign the Corona stimulus package and the government spending bill, and that he will use the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 in an attempt to get Congress to drop what he called wasteful spending in order to get them to boost the coronavirus stimulus checks up to the levels demanded last week. So he's looking for a $2,000 payment to the people. Now, he states, I don't know if I want to do my Trump voice, "As President of the United States, it is my responsibility to protect the people of our country from the economic devastation and hardship that was caused by the China virus. I understand that many small businesses have been forced to close as a result of harsh actions by Democrat-run states. Many people are back to work, but my job is not done until everyone is back to work. End quote. So pretty much Trump's requesting. So he's going to sign this just to get people back to work because they were saying he was holding up the funding, he's holding up people's relief. So as a political move, Trump went through with the signing, passing this bill, but he's going to attempt to invoke the Impoundment Control Act. And let's see what it says. Now, this allows the president to impound funds when he transmits a special message in accordance with the ICA. The U.S. Government Accountability Office explains, upon sending the message, amounts proposed for rescission, that is, for permanent cancellation, may be impounded for a period of 45 days of continuous congressional session. So what Trump's going to do is he's going to sign this bill. He's going to sign this $900 relief bill. Relief, dreaded air quote, relief bill. And he's going to put a bunch of things that he deemed as unworthy or useless to the American people. And they're going to have 45 days in Congress to kind of battle it out, whether or not they're going to get rid of it. They're probably, realistically, I'll tell you right now, I don't think they're going to get rid of anything. So Trump kind of backed down on this one. He has no one in his corner right now, it seems like. Even people that are in his own cabinet, his own team seem like they're really not. They're kind of almost swampy in their dealings. Even pushing this bill, even requesting for money for these other countries to begin with is pretty swampy. So then he continues, Trump, I will sign the omnibus and COVID package with a strong message that makes clear to Congress that wasteful items need to be removed. I will send back to Congress a redline version, item by item, accompanied by the formal rescission request to Congress insisting that those funds be removed from the bill. I am signing this bill to restore unemployment benefits, stop evictions, provide rental assistance, add money for PPP, return our airline workers back to work, and substantially more money for vaccine distribution, and more, much more. So Trump's really he's making like he's doing this for the American people. I think he partially is. These revisions that he's looking for, I don't think are going to happen, and I'll explain why. So on Monday, the House will vote to increase the payment from $600 to $2,000. So the House actually did approve that. Now, additionally, what Congress is looking is so now what Trump is saying is he's attempting, along with Mitch McConnell, so he's attempting to revise Section 230. They're actually looking to get rid of Section 230 in its entirety. I don't think that's a good idea, me personally. I think they should revise it and just make it much more straightforward and less subjective in terms of what is needed, what is necessary to take down content. It seems very up in the air. It seems very subjective and very broad. So next what I have here is I have the Associated Press. House votes to override Trump on the defense bill. And this all kind of ties in here. So this is the AP. House votes to override Trump veto on defense bill. And then there's also a Wall Street Journal article. And I think I might have them mixed. No, that's good. Okay. So the Wall Street Journal articles by Natalie Andrews and Catherine Lucy. I'm going to leave both of them up there so you can read both just to get an idea. So House votes to increase stimulus checks to $2,000, override Trump's veto of defense bill. Defense measure now goes to Senate, is poised to be first bill to become law over Trump's objections. So Mr. Trump reacted to the defense bill vote on Twitter Tuesday morning saying, and I quote, "Weak and tired Republican leadership will allow the bad defense bill to pass." He added, "Negotiate a better bill or get better leaders now. Senate should not approve the NDAA until fixed." The NDAA is the bill. That's the name of it. I guess that's whatever acronym they have. So then the annual defense bill sets pay rates for troops and authorizes funds for military construction projects, aircraft, ships, nuclear weapons, and other national security programs. So what this includes is, I think it was a 3% increase across the board for our military, our soldiers or our military personnel. And then on top of that, I think it was an increased benefit. It was like a stipend for certain benefits, a little bit better of a deal. So they got a decent gig out of it. What Trump wants is he wants more money for the troops, essentially. And then he also objected to the provision that required the administration to submit to Congress, and this is the real part that I think he really objected to. He also would have liked more money and funding just to defend against China and Russia, but he objected to the provisions that required the administration to submit to Congress a comprehensive assessment of a planned Afghanistan withdrawal before it can use funds to pull those troops. The Trump administration has said it would cut troop levels in Afghanistan by half to roughly 2,500 by January 15th. Another provision prevents the withdrawal of troops from Germany until 120 days after the Secretary of Defense formally assesses the move for Congress, a timeline that would delay any withdrawal until after Mr. Biden takes office. So the reason, and this is the swamp coming back together. This is the, what do they call it? The industrial complex. There's a certain word for it. The military industrial complex, I think they call it. Now, the reason Trump really has been wanting to get out of Afghanistan, he was pushing for it. And I remember his staff was saying that they were going to be getting out of. I reported on this like maybe 2 months ago or a month and a half ago, how they were going to cut their troop levels about in half, and then I showed you charts of how high the troop levels were when Obama was there. It was around 100,000 they had there. Now at this point we're at 2,500, and the amount of spending was so substantial. Or was it the spending? I think the spending was like something like 100 billion when Obama was there, and now it's been cut at least in half, even more than that. From the Trump administration. So he's been getting out of all of these global affairs. From what it seems like, he does not like the idea of, he likes the idea of more isolationist, but also have strong borders as well as a strong military to supplement that as a deterrent for other countries. Now, the swamp likes the idea of the military-industrial complex, so they like the idea of globalism across the world, and they like having their hand in every other country, sending our young out to die, some of the best that we have to offer. Now, Germany, the withdrawal from Germany is kind of confusing. I don't really know, but it seems, and the way this is going to be formed and the way it was propagated by the media was, we have a president that doesn't want to, pay the troops. He's the first guy to attempt to veto this in, so many years. I don't think this has ever really happened. I think this bill's been passed, the defense budget, every single year for apparently, I think I read something like 2 or 3 decades. So it's a very long time since it's been vetoed or has failed to pass. So we have the House of Representatives overrode the veto, so they had more than 2/3 of a vote, and now it's going to go to the Senate, which is led by the GOP. So I don't really know how that's going to go. I have a feeling the Senate's going to pass it through as well. So Trump's actually going to get. Actually, though, they need 2/3, so I'm not really sure, but Trump might get beat there. But it shows how quickly the swamp is willing, or the establishment is willing to just turn around on a Republican as soon as it seems like he lost the election. As soon as that happens, as soon as the media is promulgating that he lost the election, even though and this was before the electors actually cast their vote on December 14th. Before all of that, they were already quick to turn their back on him. So it just shows how spineless a lot of these people are and how they don't really have any type of conviction, which doesn't really surprise guys like Mitch McConnell as well as Lindsey Graham. That doesn't really surprise anyone that it happened. Now guys like Ted Cruz, they're much more fundamentally, they have some sort of ethical code to them. Whereas there's a lot of these swampy Republicans that have been in there kind of for their own gain. So Trump warns the So next what I have is, it's him covering it, and then I'll explain the side of why McConnell seems like they might agree with it. And McConnell is going to hold up this spending, this $900 billion relief right now, and I think he's going to hold it up because he wants Section 230 repealed, as well as some other things. So Trump wants the GOP of death wish as McConnell blocks Democratic effort to pass $2,000 relief payments. Now, the move indicates the Senate GOP leader isn't clear where Republicans stand. This is by Miriam Khan. This is a ABC News article. So McConnell, speaking on the Senate floor Tuesday, instead indicated the Senate would work on responding to the concerns raised by President Donald Trump when he signed the $900 billion pandemic relief and government funding bill Sunday. McConnell said the Senate will begin a process to bring three priorities to the table this week, which includes increasing stimulus payments to $2,000, examining a repeal of Section 230, and considering election integrity measures, all demands Trump has made in the recent days. So this is very interesting. We're not really sure if McConnell and Trump are on the same team right now. It seems like McConnell is marching to the same beat as Trump in terms of repealing Section 230, as well as considering some sort of election integrity national measures of some sort of uniformity across the country. Laws for voter ID would probably be the very first thing, and it would be the simplest thing to enact. So after McConnell spoke, Trump once again tweeted a warning saying, unless Republicans have a death wish, and it is also the right thing to do, they must approve the $2,000 payments ASAP. It's unclear at this point how McConnell plans to proceed, but if he does intend to tie those three issues Trump wanted addressed together into one bill, it's unlikely to pass, which is true. It probably is unlikely to pass. Now, next, Chris Murphy, a Democrat from Connecticut, said on the floor, and I quote, if we start adding poison pills to the $2,000 payment bill, that is just another way of telling the American people that this body doesn't support $2,000 payments. So this is very interesting. So we have a Democrat from Connecticut pretty much saying we're calling these poison pills. If you're adding the idea of protecting the First Amendment through some sort of a reform of Section 230, as well as considering some sort of election integrity measures, some sort of protocol that would add integrity to our elections and validity to them. Those are considered now by the Democrat Party. That's considered poison pills. That's what that is. That's poison pills. Doing something like that. That's a horrible idea. God forbid, Republicans win an election because the other side is not trying to rig it the entire time. That's really that's the answer that you get from your Democrat Congressman Chris Murphy, the senator from Connecticut. That just shows how far left and far left wing Democrats can say things like that, because it doesn't matter, because their base is so far left too. They don't even care. It's just outright. It is conspicuous. It is just out in the open for everyone to know that that's the way you feel about it. Election integrity and supporting the First Amendment, something that is like, it's sitting in the election integrity is another thing that is constitutional. So there's a lot of things. Two things were violated. The Constitution's violated Section 230 with freedom of speech, and then you got violations in Pennsylvania, and those are related to election integrity. So you have two different breaches of the constitutional authority, and this guy doesn't care. It doesn't matter to him. So then to continue, we have Schumer. He states, and I quote, I don't want to hear that we can't afford it. I don't want to hear that it would add too much to the deficit. Senate Republicans added nearly $2 trillion to the deficit to give corporations a massive tax cut. Leader McConnell holds the keys to unlocking this dilemma. So, and then just after Schumer said something, then you got Bernie Sanders also asking for unanimous consent that after the Senate vote to override the defense policy veto, which is expected to happen Wednesday, it take up and pass the $2,000 stimulus check bill. So to begin with, Schumer is what he doesn't understand. Well, he knows this, but it appeals to his base to say stupid things like this. Whenever you give tax cuts, corporations, they save $2 trillion. If we just raised the tax back to what it was, we would have collected $2 trillion more in revenue. That wouldn't have happened. They would have dodged the tax. They would have found any tax write-offs to circumvent paying the tax rates, or they would have moved somewhere else. That's what they'll do. That is usually the result. Or they will cut their spending in certain ways. They will purposely actually make less money so they don't have to pay as much into taxes, and they'll spend their money in other things that they can write off. So that's why when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, when they tried to push Amazon, try to have like an Amazon base, the second base in the headquarters in the country, they tried to move it into New York. That would have brought many jobs to New York City. She was ripping them because they were giving them tax breaks, which I do agree. I don't agree with her principle or her premise to it, but I agree with the principle that if you're going to give tax breaks to Amazon, you should also give tax breaks to every other small business too, because then you got dirty capitalism. You're applying tax rules differently to one country than to one corporation than you are to another. So I do agree with her there, but that's not her premise. Her premise was, oh, we're cutting their taxes, we're giving them tax breaks. We would end up bringing in this much more money. We would save this much more money. And she was making it like the government was literally taking money and handing it to Amazon. And as long as Amazon doesn't move in here, then we're going to somehow make $2 billion or however much money it was. We're going to make that money now because we're not giving the tax break to Amazon. And that's not the truth. The truth is, fact of the matter is, the government of New York City government was not handing money to Amazon. They were giving them tax breaks, and Amazon was saving money on the money they were already going to be paying. So she screwed a bunch of people out of jobs. And that's the way that the Democrats understand taxation. And I guess she speaks for the progressive part of the party. I'm not really sure exactly, and I don't really know if these people are coming out truthfully. They actually don't know economics, or they just come out and they say this stuff because it kind of appeals and it rallies up the base a little bit, and it's popular to say it, and it'll get them, like maybe a meme on Facebook somewhere. So the Joint Committee on Taxation estimated that the $2,000 relief payments could cost as much as $464 billion, which is more than half of what the entire COVID-19 relief package is at $900 billion. The current COVID-19 relief measures that include $600 checks came at a total cost of $160 billion. So out of the $900 billion, you had $160 billion of it going straight to the American citizen's pocket, which obviously isn't enough. Now, ideally, me personally, and I need to clarify this because people are questioning me about it, I personally would not like a stimulus package. I don't like the idea of it because it isn't a stimulus. The government is a net loser all around all the time. So the government taking your money and just redistributing it to everybody else or to you really is not a stimulus package. That's just called a spending bill. Everything the government comes through with, it's always spending. It's always a spending bill no matter what because they are a net loser. They do not gain. They do not add any type of value to the economy. So I would much rather have a situation where businesses were allowed to open across the country. I don't really like the idea, but I do understand that. And to begin with, I don't want any type of payments. If we're going to go and we're going to give payments, the payments should be directly to American people. There should be no payments going to governments because that is on the people that live in that state that run the government as well as the people that live in that state for not holding them accountable. That is not up to somebody living in Louisiana to pay for New York City to get a huge a huge budget bailout. That is not up to them. So ideally the situation really would be is we open up the country again and allow people to actually make money. But this part now, $2,000 payment would be much better than what we're doing now. So the $2,000 relief will cost $464, so it's about half of what the $900 billion. You really could pay $4,000 in relief for that $900 billion deal, but they have all that BS and all that they call pork or fat in the budget, in the relief bill. That's all garbage. So that's really what my main problem, just to clarify, my main problem is that if out of this $900 billion worth of relief, a very minimal amount of it, about what 2/9 of it go to, maybe not even 20% of it go to the people, and that's it. And then you have like these big corporations getting bailouts, and it's really not a comprehensive plan. There's all those things those are my main issues with it. Ideally, you would much rather see the economy open up, but you don't want to see people. I mean, at this point, it is up to the government. Especially in these individual states, it's really up to the state governments that decide to shut down everyone's businesses. That's the biggest problem. So to address the Section 230 concerns that Mitch McConnell has, they're talking about repealing Section 230. Me personally, I've spoke about this before. I do not think that is the answer. I think the solution here is to change the wording or change it to specifically things that are against the law will be taken down, but other than that, pretty much everything else is fair game. Now, Poland is holding the social media companies accountable, and this is a Daily Caller article written by Brianna Lyman. Report: Poland's justice minister introduces bill to hold social media companies accountable for censorship. So it reads, Polish lawmakers have reportedly introduced a bill that aims to codify social media users' freedom of speech by giving them the opportunity to lodge complaints against big tech companies that censor them. Justice Minister Zbigniew Ziobro introduced the legislation December 17th that protects users from having their posts arbitrarily removed from online sites, according to Poland in. As long as the posted content does not violate any Polish law, then social media companies are prohibited from removing the content or blocking accounts that post the content. So this is a freedom of speech issue, and this is what Poland is pushing for. And they said they were going to make some sort of, I don't know if it's in this article, but they're going to make an office, oh, there you go, imposed by Poland's Office of Electric Communications. They'll make an actual like First Amendment office to regulate this, this is something that America really, we should adopt this from Poland. It's really it's unequivocally probably the smartest thing I've found so far, the most effective. It sounds like the most effective thing to defending free speech on these social media platforms, instead of getting yourself throttled or suppressed and then taken down, and then having the censorship with the little icon, the disclaimer at the bottom. For example, we had recently, I just saw Joe Biden next to Robert Byrd. Robert Byrd is a longtime Democrat. Was in the government. I don't remember if he was a senator. I think he was a senator, and he was in the government until I think the 2000s. Robert Byrd, and he was a Ku Klux Klan member. We don't know exactly what his position was in the Ku Klux Klan, but there's Biden going around with them campaigning to try to get this guy elected back to his position. So there's a picture of that on Facebook, on Twitter, whatever. So it's up there, and then they add a disclaimer, oh, this is out of context information. And the headline was like, Joe Biden campaigning with KKK member Robert Byrd. So then I go, okay, this is interesting. So I personally know this dude was, I mean, I've looked it up. I know who Robert Byrd is. So then I click on it, and it shows, out of context, Robert Byrd was at this time was no longer a KKK member. And it's like, yeah, obviously no longer. I mean, he was in the government obviously no longer. He was a KKK member. And this is something that you see from the left. What they do is, with these fact checkers on social media sites, they'll put these fact checkers up to try to delegitimize, and then they just assume if it's fact checked, the people aren't even going to click on it, and they'll just assume that it is a false statement when really it is a true statement. Yeah, it's out of anything. You can really consider anything out of context or a conspiracy theory. What the left does is they do that to eliminate or delegitimize the argument or the fact that it's a true statement. This dude was, it said something like KKK king or something like that. I don't remember the positions of there's these different weird positions of the KKK. Like, oh, he's a master wizard dragon or something like that. And they said he wasn't a master wizard dragon. He stepped out of the KKK in this year. And it's like, it doesn't matter though. The guy was still in the KKK. At the end of the day, the guy was still in the KKK. And that's what they do. They try to delegitimize. It's another way for them to obstruct people from finding information. It's a way to censor people, to try to delegitimize the right's argument on anything. And I'm going to go into that over the weekend. I have some information about who actually funds a lot of these third-party fact-checking organizations that are supposed to be nonprofits. I have some information on that. It's just funny, though, the way it works. It always works on the right. It's always fact-checking the right. It's never fact-checking the left. I saw like maybe one fact-check of a left-wing source one time in my entire time looking on the internet. So if a company, it continues the piece. If a company does remove said content or user access, then a user can file a complaint, and the platform will have 24 hours to consider it. According to the report, if a user does not receive access after 48 hours, the user can file a petition to the court, which has 7 days to review the complaint to regain access, Poland is reported. So then I have this other thing. It's a related article. Poland rules abortions for defects are unconstitutional, severely limiting access to legal abortion. So it seems like Poland, from people that I know that are Polish, they seem pretty conservative in a lot of their views. So then it continues. This Ziobro, this minister states, often the victims of tendencies for ideological censorship are also representatives of various groups operating in Poland whose content is removed or blocked just because they express views and refer to values that are unacceptable from the point of view of communities with an ever stronger influence on the functioning of social media. So he is referring directly to the Silicon Valley hack jobs that run Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google. He's directly referring to them that their conservative views that they have in Poland have been censored, have been taken down, they've been removed, they've been blocked, and it's unacceptable. First Amendment wise, it's completely unacceptable. In our country, it's unacceptable. In their country, they must have some sort of form of freedom of speech or some sort of provision for that. So if the court rules in favor of the user that is challenging one of these social media sites for removing or blocking their content, the platform doesn't obey the ruling, as in the platform doesn't put it back up, they could face a fine of up to 1.8 million euros imposed by Poland's Office of Electric Communications. So this is kind of related to what's going on now. Trump signed an executive order in May that called for social media giants to lose their liability shield if they engage in censorship after Twitter fact-checked one of the president's tweets regarding mail-in voting, similar to what Ziobro, the prime minister from Poland, said. Trump noted that social media companies have unchecked power to censor users and make editorial decisions, end quote. So, yeah, he's completely right with this. I just don't think that there should be a repeal of the 230. I just think this is the way we should do it. We should go, unless if it is unlawful, something that is against the United States Code or United States law, that is the only time that it should justifiably be taken down. Otherwise, you are no longer a platform. You are now a publisher. When you are taking down and you are shutting down content, when you are picking and choosing what you deem as legitimate or necessary or authoritative news source, then now you are no longer a platform, because the platform you think of as the public square, the public center. It's like walking up to your neighbor and just talking to them freely and openly. You're no longer a platform. You are now a publisher, and you do not have... Now you are liable. You are liable for every single tweet or every single Facebook post that goes out. Any damage that is done from that, you are now liable for essentially, if you're going to just pick and choose what content you see necessary. So then what I have next is, and this is going to be my next segment overall, I'm going to have the media themselves, the anointed ones, giving themselves pats on the back over the years. I have a Jim Acosta article that's remarkable, and it'll make you crack up in your seat. So what I have is, it's a media misfeasance video. James O'Keefe is talking about the way in which Americans have to approach everyday life now because the media is just so biased and they suppress stories. Play clip 6.
What do you think it says about where we are as a country, though, that it's Project Veritas, One American News that's digging up this stuff, and not law enforcement, attorney general's offices, etc.?
I think people are afraid. I think the powers that be are designed to protect the status quo, and I think there's a symbiotic relationship between the FBI and the fraud. The director of the FBI, Wray, says there's no fraud. There's no evidence of fraud. I mean, think of the irony that the director of the FBI, the guy tasked with exposing fraud, is saying that there isn't any fraud. So I said to the audience here, all of you, it's up to you. You can't rely upon journalists. I mean, you do some good reporting. One American News does some reporting, but we can't rely upon the media. Like, we are the media. It's just us. We can't even rely upon our elected representatives. And the only thing they fear is exposure. So that's it. We have to expose, and it's either that or I guess we're headed towards civil unrest.
Yeah, unfortunately, he epitomizes, or he sums it up exactly what is going on in the culture from the media, the legacy media class in this country. You need to go out of your way personally, and you need to look things up for yourselves. You need to find sources that are going to report the news that is not being reported by the media right now. There's going to be civil unrest, he thinks, because the Constitution really isn't being upheld, because the media also has some sort of responsibility to the Constitution and the First Amendment, informing the people what is going on with the government, what are they doing, how are they usurping their power, what kind of encroachments are they partaking in. And this is something that's not being done, where they're suppressing stories, just like the Hunter Biden story, just like Hunter Biden, the connections to China. There's a bunch of stories that I find, and what was the one, this Polish story, for example. When I looked this Polish story up, I was only able to find 2 different sources on this, and this is something that isn't covered by the mainstream media, and there's a reason why it's not covered. They don't want you to know that there's other countries having the same issue with Facebook. They want it to be almost like a right-wing myth or a right-wing conspiracy theory that Facebook, as well as Twitter, are colluding against the Republicans or the conservatives online. They want it to be like a big joke. Look at these crazy whack job conservative Trump supporters. They think that we're going after them, and that's the reason that they lost the election and things like that. They want to propagate this myth or promulgate this big mythical conspiracy story of it, and they want a total blackout from the media to the point where you almost don't know what the news is anymore. And especially Google, because when you go onto Google to a search engine like Google instead of Bing or Yahoo, when you go to, or DuckDuckGo, when you go onto Google and you search this information, you legitimately have to go down pages and pages of info because they're suppressing that content because they don't want you to hear about it. So this is something that's going on in other countries as well, the social media malfeasance. And that's just what he's alluding to. And people, just like Project Veritas, you're going to have to go out there and you're going to have to find it on your own. There's a reason that this channel, myself, I'm actually doing, even from the shutdown, no advertisements, nothing. There's a reason that shows like mine are actually doing pretty successfully in the very inception of its creation. I've only been around now at this point for maybe 2 months, and I've seen my viewership increase. I've seen my subscribers on YouTube as well as Rumble increase pretty substantially from when I first opened up, and most of the stuff I talk about. And I only come out with really 2 current event videos a week, and those are the things that usually drive viewership. All the Federalist paper ones are kind of just for the technical dorks that love the Constitution, which is fine. But these actually drive my viewership and my subscriptions and my followers, and it seems like I'm building up steam, and there's a reason, because this is the news, this is the alternative news that no one else is reporting in the mainstream media. There's a reason why this is successful. There's a reason why Dan Bongino's successful, Buck Sexton, even Rush Limbaugh. There's a reason why the Daily Wire in its entirety is successful as well. There's a lot of people right-wing on the right side. Then there's also people like Dave Rubin, who was the classical liberal, as well as Tim Pool, and it seems like they're moving further and further to the right as the media goes apoplectic and makes them out to be these villains. They vilify them. And now at this point, I mean, if you look at, you got to follow Dave Rubin on Twitter. It's pretty awesome. He just has a FU Newsom thing every single day with the middle finger up. He's eating food in Florida. He's bragging about how he's never going back to California. So they really turned their own, the classical liberal class in the Democrat Party. They've turned them the other way. So what I have now is I have Jim Acosta. He's calling for hazard pay. This is a Fox News article by Brian Flood. It's titled "CNN's Jim Acosta roasted for saying covering Trump was nonstop national emergency might merit hazard pay." So he's looking for hazard pay because he had to cover Trump. So this is derived from an Atlantic article, The Atlantic. The drama has made him famous, but Acosta said he doesn't expect to bring the same crusading style to his coverage of the next administration. He states, and I quote, "I don't think the press should be trying to whip up the Biden presidency and turn it into a must-see TV in a contrived way," end quote. So he's pretty much saying everything Acosta's kind of become famous because he's been so appalling in his messaging and so disrespectful to the president, as well as Kayleigh McEnany, his press secretary. He's been so rude and disrespectful that he's kind of become famous over this, and he thinks he's like a fighter for the cause because he's not really a reporter. Because journalists are supposed to ask kind of objective questions, things that are informative to the people of the United States, the citizenry, just to inform them what is exactly going on. His questions they're loaded questions that are directed towards contriving a narrative that Trump is bad. So those are the kind of, he gives you those gotcha, those when did you beat your wife questions. He would throw out there the gotcha questions that you could put up on a headline. Trump says he never beat his wife, but then it still looks bad no matter what. Those are the kind of things that Jim Acosta is infamous for at this point. So now he's saying, oh, we're not going to do that against the Biden presidency. We won't do that because he is not a reporter. He is an activist, rather. Now, it goes on. If that sounds like a double standard, Acosta told me it's not partisan. It's a matter of professional solidarity. In his review, Trump's campaign to discredit the press has constituted a nonstop national emergency, one that required a defiant response. If being at the White House is not an experience that might merit hazard pay, he said, then perhaps it is going to be approached differently. So he's trying to infer that he should get hazard pay because it was a national emergency every single time he talked to Donald Trump. Now, the idea, now it is a double standard in two ways, and maybe I'll read this first and then I'll explain it to you. He states, and I quote, "As the White House beat became the biggest story in the world, once obscure correspondents were recast in the popular imagination as resistance heroes fighting the truth, justice, and the American way. They were showered with book deals, speaking gigs, and hundreds of thousands of Twitter followers." And this is the writer of the piece in The Atlantic. I don't remember his name exactly. I'm trying to find him. It'll say his name, though. So he's pretty much saying that all of these reporters really made their money in fighting the truth and justice and the American way, being part of the resistance. They got these huge, like Jim Acosta had a huge book deal, these speaking gigs where they make thousands of dollars. They add on to their Twitter following from all of this. So Trump really made them famous. And this is something that I've stated before. CNN may actually have to, if this is a Biden presidency, CNN may have to actually liquidate their business because they are making no money at all because they're not trusted anymore and they're so biased, and they actually made their money even to begin with by ripping Trump. So now that they have no one to really rip apart, they are not must-watch TV, and I don't know how they're going to survive at this point. So Acosta, who emerged as a hero of the anti-Trump resistance for his combative style of questioning members of the administration, is perhaps the most famous example of someone who benefited from covering Trump. Copens, so that's the name of the writer, Copens noted critics who have accused him of showboating with such antics as walking out of the press conference after then. Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders refused to say reporters weren't enemies of the people. And Copens continues, but he insists that his on-air indignation has always been genuine. Now, and then he goes on to state, you can't just go and trash the press. Oh, this is Jim Acosta, and this is why I'm going to explain to you the double standard. You can't just go and trash the press and totally lie to the American people and tell them real news is fake news. I don't think the press should be trying to whip up the Biden presidency and turn it into must-see TV in a contrived way. So this is why it's a double standard. So what you're inferring is that it isn't something that's covered under the freedom. Your inference that you're making is, oh, well, the president can't talk trash about me. No one in his administration can, because that's lying to the American people, and that's not allowed. But then you can turn around and you can badmouth Trump and you could badmouth his entire administration. And I know I've heard different media sources, different reporters, or so they call themselves, journalists that are really activists. They'll say, oh, well, what he's doing is he's trying to undermine our democracy by saying we're fake news, and he's trying to do this and do that. And oh, he's attacking our First Amendment right, but that's his First Amendment right to say that you guys are horrible at your jobs and you guys are fake news because you guys are activists. And there is, right now in this country, I'm sure there's a bunch of different polls out, media reliance or media validity or reliability in this country from the views of the citizenry, of the constituents, is at an all-time low. No one believes in what they see in the media. They think it's all BS all of the time. So next, what I have here, and this is what I'm going to continue on. This is going to be the point. This is the theme of this show, that the media is biased. They do a horrible job. They're ineffective. Their ineptitude has really cost the country a lot of different things. Whether it is, and here's a prime example. So we have the California, this is by Dr. Susan Berry. It is a Breitbart piece. It'll be in the description below. Everything will be in the description below, as always. So California judge orders video journalists to pay $13.6 million to Planned Parenthood. So this article states, on Tuesday, U.S. District Judge William Orrick III ordered David Daladin and his associates at Center for Medical Progress to pay $13.6 million over $2 million in damages they were ordered to pay last year for recording the abortion vendors' officials while they discussed how to harvest the fetal tissue for sale. And that is putting it mildly, harvest the fetal tissue for sale, because of the things that they're saying. And I will show you the video. It's about 2 minutes long. It's pretty disgusting. If you do not want to watch it, I highly advise you just go right through the 2 minutes, because it's grotesque. It is abhorrent. Now, what happened is the Center for Medical Progress, that is an association that is, I guess they're pro-life advocates, and these individuals got together and they were asking, and Daladin and the rest of his employees or other advocates that were with him, they appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and this hopefully, I really hope this goes up to the Supreme Court, because this is actually a First Amendment issue to begin with, so I don't really know how he can force them to pay that much money, especially when what they were saying was true. Defamation of character is actually lying about somebody and then costing them their job or costing them money. Now, Planned Parenthood could be cost money, or they could have cost themselves their jobs from what they said. But what they said was, that's what they said. It wasn't what he said. He didn't say, oh, they do this, they do that, and then that cost them a lot of money or their jobs. He wasn't contriving, or he wasn't confounding things. He wasn't lying. He wasn't making up a story. It is straight video of what they are saying, the employees that work for Planned Parenthood, their upper officials within the organization. So, in November 2019, a jury found the pro-life journalists violated the Federal Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, causing significant harm to Planned Parenthood with its video series, and awarded the punitive damage to the abortion provider. So, once I read this Federal Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act, I did not find anything that these gentlemen could have been prosecuted. I have zero clue what they're even talking about. I don't know the reference of the specific statute within this act. I tried to read through it. I could not figure out exactly how they got them on this. And then the piece goes on to say, Orrick, who is the judge in the case, Daladin told SiriusXM's Breitbart News Tonight soon afterwards. He says Orrick, who is the judge in the case, is actually the founder of a Planned Parenthood of Northern California clinic in San Francisco, which is hilarious. He added what he and his legal team discovered about the relationship between Orrick and high-level Democrats. Planned Parenthood, very intentionally and very strategically, and with a lot of gamesmanship, filed this case specifically to get it in San Francisco in front of a judge, William Orrick, who is an Obama appointee, who was a bundler for the Obama campaign for hundreds of thousands of dollars and best friends with Tom Steyer. So when they were going out speaking to these different individuals from Planned Parenthood, I guess it was in multiple locations, so you really had to just choose one for the civil case. They worked it out, so they got in San Francisco with an Obama appointee judge that is super far left. So Daladin and his attorneys unsuccessfully attempted to get Orrick, the judge, recused from this case several times. The judge blocked the jury from viewing all the undercover video he produced during his undercover investigation. So this information here, the undercover video, in and of itself, and you'll see it, it will clear them of anything, any wrongdoing, these individuals that work for this organization. It will clear Daladin and all of his associates from any type of wrongdoing. Now, the judge blocked the jury from viewing this. Now, in addition, Orrick's wife, who is the judge's wife, her Facebook account was found to have posted public comments along with a photo of her and her husband that indicated support for Planned Parenthood and criticism of Daladin and CMP. CMP is his organization. So Planned Parenthood has yet to be prosecuted for any of the allegations of profiting from the sales of body parts of babies aborted in its clinics. It's pretty disgusting. So in June 2019, Senate Judiciary Chairman Lindsey Graham and his predecessor, Senator Chuck Grassley, wrote on wrote to Attorney General William Barr and FBI Director Christopher Wray seeking an update on the federal investigation that was supposedly launched in 2017 into the allegations raised in part through the video documentation by CMP, the organization. The senators asked Barr and Wray to respond to their inquiry no later than July 2nd of last year. In August 2019, Breitbart News reached out to the Senate Judiciary Committee press team for an update on the Department of Justice FBI response and was informed SJC was still awaiting a response. So that's the Senate Judiciary Committee. So they did not, I guess the FBI was supposed to look into this after this video came out saying that they are selling baby parts, which is what they have openly said that is what they're doing. So they said they're selling baby parts essentially, and there was supposed to be an FBI investigation, and when inquired about that FBI investigation, there has been no answer. And now at this point, I believe they recorded all this in 2016, so it's been 4 years now, and the swamp is deep, I guess. They like the idea of killing children. I don't really understand it. The appeal, maybe they're making money off selling the parts. I'm not really sure. But this next video I have, this is the video that got these people in trouble. Now they owe $13.6 million. This will never, once this goes up to the Ninth Circuit, I hope these guys appeal it all the way up to the Supreme Court, because the Ninth Circuit's known to be pretty left-wing. I hope they appeal this up to the Supreme Court, and I hope the Supreme Court comes down with some indignation on this case, because this is unfair. First Amendment-wise, this is unfair, and there really should be an investigation into these Planned Parenthood individuals. They should be criminally prosecuted for doing something that is, I'm pretty sure, selling baby parts is illegal. So what I have is the video. It's going to be about 2 minutes long. Anyone that wants to fast forward through the whole thing, I don't blame you. Yeah, play that clip.
Great. The tapes appear to describe times when the clinics adjust the abortion procedure to better harvest.
It's not done.
The fetal
it's absolutely not done. And I've talked to doctors all across the country. And
to me, that's a kind of a specious little argument, and I wouldn't object to asking Ian, who's our surgeon who does the cases, to use an iPass at that gestation age in order to increase the odds that he was going to get an intact specimen.
I'd say a lot of people want liver. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, most providers will do this case under ultrasound guidance, so they'll know where they're putting their forceps.
I'll mention this to Ian in terms of how he feels about using a less crunchy technique to get more whole specimens.
We've been very good at getting parts on liver because we know that, so I'm not going to crush that part. I'm going to basically crush below, I'm going to crush above, and I'm going to see if I can get it intact.
Sometimes, if someone delivers before we are able to see them for procedure, then we are intact.
I literally have had women come in and they'll go to the OR and they're back out in 3 minutes, and I'm going, what's going on? Oh yeah, the fetus was already in the vaginal canal whenever we put her in the stirrups. It just fell out.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you had intact cases, which we've done a lot, so we've sometimes shipped those back to our lab in its entirety. Tell the lab it's coming. So don't open the box. Oh God. You know what I mean?
In the cases of when it's mattered, the physicians also need an intact specimen. They can make it happen. Right. So we just need to figure out how that we can do this, under our project needs.
Federal abortion ban is a law, and laws are up to interpretation. So if I say on day one I do not intend to do this, what ultimately happens doesn't matter.
So that's where we have to do a little bit of training with the providers on making sure they didn't crush.
For example, so I had 8 cases yesterday, and I knew exactly what we needed, and I kind of looked at the list, and I said, all right, this 17-weeker has 8 grams, and this one. So I knew which were the cases that were probably more likely to yield what we needed, and I made my decisions according to that too. So it's worth having a huddle at the beginning of the day, and that's what I do.
If we alter our process, and we are able to obtain intact fetal cadavers, it's all just a matter of line items.
So we have different doctors in that field of I don't even know what kind of field to call it now. They're talking about crushing. The one probably the worst one is the one that's sitting there eating, talking about it, and then drinking the wine. She's a younger woman. making it like they have a list of things that they need, and on that needed list they kind of go down the list. Oh, what do I need when I perform this abortion, when I literally like pull this baby out by forceps and pull and really just pull limbs off of the child, because that's how this process is done. What do I need? So what I'll do with my forceps is, if I need a heart, I'll crush their arm, I'll crush their leg, whatever I have to, I'll pull all that out, just so then I can keep the intact specimen. They call it a specimen because they don't view this as human life at 7-8 weeks. They just do not view it as human life, and science says otherwise. In terms of developed heartbeat, I think starts around 4 or 5 weeks. You got to develop, the central nervous system starts to develop at a very early period. Thus, that baby can feel everything that's happening to it when you are crushing it to death. It's pretty disgusting, pretty grotesque. I don't really want to go further into it. You can watch the video. It's about, I'll tell you how many minutes in. It starts like 50 minutes in. Now, if you want to see it on YouTube, it's kind of hard. I tried as best as I could to raise and lower the volume based on the different type of video to make it as clear as possible. So next, what I have is, speaking of people that don't care about children and kill children, we have China. We have thousands of pastors go into hiding amid China's rising persecution, attempts to eradicate Christianity, by Jackson Elliott. It is from thechristianpost.com. This is another thing that has not really been reported. We will be very quick to talk about other religions when they're being persecuted, but Christianity really is never one that is talked about. And this ties into everything all around, and I'll explain once I'm done. So they are reinterpreting scripture. That's a big thing that they're doing right now in China. So it reads, tens of thousands of house church pastors and evangelists across China have gone into hiding as the Communist Party prepares for what seems like a final assault on Christianity in an attempt to eradicate it from the country, according to missions group Asia Harvest. So this group, I guess, is some sort of pro-Christianity group or pro-freedom of religion group. In its final newsletter for 2020, Asia Harvest said pastors have disconnected from their phones and computers so that government authorities can no longer use those devices to track their movements. These pastors have also reportedly destroyed the microchips inside their ID cards so authorities cannot track their location using those devices either. So we're looking at one of the biggest police and spy states in the entire world in China. They are pros at this. They're very good at it. They are adept at the skill of being a police and a spy state of the people. They have microchips inside of their ID cards so they know where people are at all times so they can track you. It's unbelievable. Now, so each person in China must have an ID card. It is impossible for a person to catch a flight or train, open a bank account, get a job, or rent an apartment without using their ID. Each ID card contains a computer chip, which is also used to track people's movements. I'm assuming that every single time they pass through a certain area, there's probably some sort of device that scans their chip, almost like when you're driving and you have an easy pass. When you pass a certain bank, it will scan your Easy Pass and charge it. And that's probably how they keep track of people, almost like contact tracing in a way. Now, by doing this, the regime hopes to control the church and ultimately render it powerless and subservient to the communist system, Asia Harvest added. The government has openly announced plans to reinterpret the Bible and other religious texts so they will have socialist characteristics. Tremendous. So China has also tightened restrictions on the distribution of religious materials in recent months by threatening fines, the closure of printing shops, or even imprisonment for selling Christian books or allowing customers to photocopy hymns. According to Bitter Winter, a publication that monitors religious liberty violations in China. In April 2018, the Chinese government banned online retailers from selling copies of the Bible. Legally, the Bible can only be distributed by government-approved agencies that supervise Christian churches in China. Since then, the crackdown on Bibles and religious literature has only increased. In September, a Chinese Christian online bookstore owner was sentenced to 7 years in prison and fined nearly $30,000 for engaging in what the communist regime deems as illegal business operations. So if you sell a Bible in China, it is illegal unless if it is approved by a government agency there. And because of that, there's been the crackdown on Bibles and religious literature has only increased. Yeah, they're having more and more crackdowns on this information. And then it continues. Other crackdowns on Christians have involved ordering Christians to renounce their faith and replace displays of Jesus with portraits of Chairman Mao and President Xi Jinping, as well as the ongoing demolition of churches. So they're destroying churches as well. So despite persecution, Christianity is growing in China. According to the World Evangelical Alliance, the Protestant Church has grown from 1.3 million members in 1949 to at least 81 million members today. Similarly, the Catholic Church in China has grown from 3 million members to over 12 million during the same 50-year period. But according to national statistics from the China State Council, Protestant Christians make up only an estimated 3% of China's population and number around 38 million people. The Economist reports this estimate, however, is much lower than what the WEA, the World Evangelical Alliance, reports, and doesn't include Christians in the underground church. So we have Christians underground right now because they're being persecuted for their religious beliefs in China. So this is the kind of country, now this is the country that the left tells you not to worry about. They don't worry about China, they worry more about Russia. China, in terms of their population's much larger, their economy's much more powerful. It really is, it's unbelievable that this is going on, and our media class is not reporting on something like this at all. And it's because they extol a lot of the virtues of a Chinese, a communist or a socialist regime and idea, because and I'll tell you why. China does this because they don't want you to feel anything they don't want you to be dedicated towards anything other than the state, other than their government. They want you to fully be indoctrinated into the culture and the propaganda of their government. And being religious, and I'm not even a big religious guy, I am for religious freedom all around. Being religious is something that actually stands in the way of your indoctrination into the Chinese government. So anything that stands in the way, such as, and that's another reason why they were killing children for the longest time, because that's another thing that stands in the way is family as well. Family values, having a family, and I don't think it really had much to do with population control. I think it was much more to eliminate the family structure, because that is another thing that you would put ahead of the Chinese government or head of the state. The family and religion are two things that on the list of priorities or the hierarchy of needs, it outclasses the government of China. And this is, our media extols a lot of socialist like values, as well as the Democrat Party likes it. So they don't want to point to China and all of the failings that they have, so they just don't report it, they just misreport it. And it's something in our country right now, there is some sort of religious persecution going on in terms of allowance of individuals in churches. They were trying to prosecute them for that in New York. They ended up and California, they both won the Supreme Court cases. So religion, freedom of religion here in this country, it seems like, is actually hanging by a thread. Not that you're going to be in prison for your religion, but practice of religion, establishment, ability to gather and practice your religion is something that it seems like is just hanging by a thread right now. And it makes sense with the move that we're making as a country to the left, that this is something that is not unexpected. This was assumed. This is not a surprise to me, and it's also not a surprise to many conservatives out there. And it's disheartening seeing this going on. And if you notice, if you look on the social media sphere, and I know the social media is not speaking for the consensus of the people, but there is some sort of a disdain for religion, and I don't really understand why. I think it's because the media kind of propagates this myth or this narrative that it is a net bad overall, because there's a couple bad actors in certain churches or up in the bureaucracy, just like there is in our government, or just like there is in any administration, any type of corporation. I'm sure there's some bad guys at the very top, but because there's a couple bad actors, now religion should be thrown out in its entirety, and people post anti-religious stuff, but I don't see people that are religious post anti-atheist stuff. So it's very weird. It seems like the aggressor in these situations much more is the atheist than it is the religious person going after the atheist, because they kind of just have their family. They have things that they have to worry about. They have these family values, because the church, or rather religion in general, it extols the virtues of family and family traditions, whereas atheism and other, I guess, like this woke culture and the idea that our society, women are the same as men and they can do whatever they want, and that whole thing in its entirety is something that it's secular in its origins, and because it's so secular, it is also deemed religion as improper or impropriety, and that's why those people that are not religious a lot of the time seem to have like a genuine disdain for people that do practice religion in this country. And I'm not even a very religious guy. I know religious people, they're great. I also know people that are not atheists but not practicing. They're also cool, but it's just disappointing seeing this right now coming from China, and then it seems like in America we're right behind them. We're not too far off. It was surprisingly in Europe, it seems like there's more religious freedom there. People are much more fervent religiously, as well as the Latin American countries, and that's something that that was what Obama harped on. He was very angry about these Hispanic voters that voted for Trump because they're religious and they're bigots and they don't believe in gay marriage, so he went after them for being religious. The left really, they think because they're so intellectual and so elitist that anything that they don't believe in is somehow beneath them. And that's what you get really coming from that side. So what I have next is I have a Fauci video with Dana Bash, and this is someone, I think Dana Bash is on CNN here. She is usually a very far left wing, very party, asks activist-like questions. I don't really know how she got her job there. She's not effective. She's not interesting. The only reason I even know her name is because people rip her so often. So there's a video of her really holding Fauci's feet to the fire. Check it out.
Let's talk about some of the solutions in terms of coronavirus. You acknowledged to the New York Times that you've moved the goalposts in terms of what it would take to reach so-called herd immunity in the United States. Here's what you said. You said, when polls said only about half of all Americans would take a vaccine, I was saying herd immunity would take 70 to 75%. Then when newer surveys said 60% or more would take it, I thought I can nudge this up a bit. So I went to 80, 85. And then you go on to say that it may be as high as 90%. So my question is, why weren't you straight with the American people about this to begin with?
No, actually, Dana, I don't think it could be interpreted as being straight or not. We have to realize that we have to be humble and realize what we don't know. These are pure estimates.
So here what you get from Dana Bash, surprisingly, is a little bit of an actual journalistic a question or some journalistic integrity here. She asks Fauci, why is it that you went from saying 70% to now 90%? And then Fauci goes on to, to be honest, we don't really know what we're talking. I mean, he really just admits that he does not know what he's talking about at this time. Then he continues, he goes on, and he talks about, at first I thought when I saw the indicators coming out on the polls, people were only willing, about 60 to 65% of people were willing to get shots or vaccinations. And now that we've kind of rolled out the vaccinations, now it seems like more people are willing. So I'm going to up the ante and say that in order to get herd immunity, now you need near 90. He said like a couple less points than 90%, where before he was only saying 70%. So she holds his feet to the fire. She asks him a question, and he really kind of just deflects it. And then he says, we really don't know what we're talking about, which was really, it was more disparaging towards him. It didn't make any type of sense. But I just figured I would cover that because Fauci's been inconsistent and flip-flopped on many things this entire time, so he's lying to everybody before saying 70%. And to begin with, if you want 90% Fauci, I don't know how you guys are going to do it, because you have 65% of the country that says that they are willing to take it. That is the only percentage that is willing to take it. So are you guys going to force the other 25% by government gun to take a vaccination because you said so? I don't really know where they're going with all of this. So asymptomatic, so what I have next is, it is a study by I'm trying to find where the study comes from. It's a scientific journal published in Nature Communications. It is coming from LifeSite News. I have this article, and the title is Asymptomatic Transmission of COVID-19 Didn't Occur at All. Study of 10 million finds. So you remember asymptomatic spread of COVID-19 in the very beginning. You had Fauci saying that it was very, very rare or not very possible. It wasn't very viable of a theory. Now, he flip-flopped on that, obviously, months later and said everyone has to watch out for the asymptomatic people. There's asymptomatic spread everywhere, pretty much. So, of this study here, we have 10 million people and 300 asymptomatic cases out of the 10 million. And if you do the math on that, I think that's something like 0.003 or 0.00. I mean, it's a very, very minimal. It's not even a percentage point. It's a fraction of a percentage point. It's very minimal. If I could do the math on that, let's see. Do I have a calculator on this laptop? I think I might. So what I have here is it is a Wuhan study, so I don't know exactly if people are going to believe in it because it comes out of Wuhan, it comes out of Australia, it comes out of the UK as well. The paper was compiled by 19 scientists, mainly from the Huazhong University of Science and Technology in Wuhan, but also from scientific institutions across China as well as in the UK and Australia. It focused on the residents of Wuhan, ground zero for COVID-19, where 9.9 million, so about 10, just to round it up, 10 million people took part in a screening program between May 14th and June 1st. So, which provided clear results as to the possibility of any asymptomatic transmission of the virus. Let's see. So I'm going to do the math here. So we got 0.00003. So you move it's 0.003 of a percentage point. So you got 3. It is 3/1000ths of a percentage point of asymptomatic spread, which is considered, to me, I would consider that very, 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 very rare asymptomatic spread. So asymptomatic transmission has been the underlying justification of lockdowns enforced all across the world. The most recent guidance from the Center for Disease Control still states that the virus can be spread by people who do not have symptoms. In fact, the CDC claimed that asymptomatic people are estimated to account for more than 50% of transmissions. That is amazing. So to say that this study is not extensive, you have almost 10 million individuals. It's just in sheer numbers and volume alone, that makes it pretty extensive. Now, if you don't want to believe it, because it's out of Wuhan, you could try to say that, but then you also had a bunch of scientists that were coming out of the UK as well as Australia, so if you want to also delegitimize those scientists as well, I guess you can try to do that and then call it a conspiracy theory. Now, it's stated in this study that out of the 10 million people, 300 asymptomatic cases were found. Contact tracing was then carried out, and of those 300, no cases of COVID-19 were detected in any of them. A total of 1,174 close contacts of the asymptomatic positive cases were traced, and they all tested negative. So out of the 300 people that were asymptomatic, everybody that they came to contact with, they were able to find 1,174 people. In all honesty, it was probably family members, especially if it's in China, because they can only, I don't know if they still have that policy where they can only have so many children. But out of those 1,174 close contacts, none of them, they all tested negative for COVID-19, thus meaning that they were not spreading at the asymptomatic people. So both the asymptomatic patients and their contacts were placed in isolation for 2 weeks, and after the fortnight, the results remained the same. None of the detected positive cases or their close contacts became symptomatic or newly confirmed with COVID-19 during the isolation period. Further evidence showed that virus cultures in the positive and repositive asymptomatic cases were all negative, indicating no viable virus in positive cases detected in this study, meaning that I would assume from very rudimentary understanding that I have that these were dead virus, I guess, or virus cultures. You can come up positive for the test, but it's dead virus that is no longer viable, and that's why it can't spread, because it can't replicate itself. So these results are not without precedent. In June, Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, I don't know if any of you remember this, the head of the WHO Emerging Disease and Zoonosis Unit, shed doubt upon asymptomatic transmission. Speaking at a press conference, she stated, "From the data we have, it still seems to be rare that an asymptomatic person actually transmits onward to a secondary individual." And then once she said that, they had to come out and the media had to suppress it, and then she had to walk back her statements. And then I think the CDC came out with something saying that they believe that 10 times more people that have had coronavirus. There's 10 times more cases. They came out with that over the summer as well, which then that would, okay, so we have 10 times more than what we thought, which would mean, in essence, the mortality rate would be 10 times less because we have 10 times more cases. Thus, you move that decimal point, you take it and you move it to the left twice. And at that point, it's once again, it is a fraction of a percentage point of the mortality rate at this point. That's what that means. But then that was another thing, it gets retracted. Everything's getting retracted over and over again. When actual information gets out there, it is suppressed very quickly to go with the status quo or the narrative. And that's another thing that I did not, I wanted to address and I almost forgot to. This idea of contact tracing, and it seems like our government's getting closer and closer to things like this with China, how China can trace you by your ID. I would not be surprised if our government was going to start coming out with things like that, because they were talking about holding an ID to verify that you had the COVID vaccination or that you have COVID antibodies to get onto planes, to do this, to do that. I think if there is a civil disobedience from the people, I'd like to say maybe a 30% civil disobedience across the board. I think that will very quickly be curtailed, the efforts of doing that, of making everyone walk around with an ID establishing that they had, that they've been vaccinated, because the amount of money that would be lost in the private sector would be unsustainable, especially at this point, what's going on right now. It'd be unsustainable if all these airliners are now telling you that you need to have this ID, and now no one's going at all. The government would have to very quickly make a 180 turn on their decision to make everyone walk around. So if there's a civil disobedience, in a general sense in America, if there was a civil disobedience to wearing the masks, doing other things like that, there was a generic civil disobedience, and I'm not talking about, it has to be, I would like to think maybe 20-30% of the people would have to really come out strong. This would end very quickly, but seems like that's not going to happen. And that's why we're kind of, when I read things about China, and then I just compare it to the United States, it's very disheartening. It's a little bit, it's sad. Makes you a little nervous, to be honest with you. It makes you a little bit nervous because because we're looking at Joe Biden, who has all these connections to China. It wouldn't have scared me as much, but we have this guy that has all these connections to China, and we have him appointing people to his cabinet that love the idea of America on the world stage, America in globalism and entrenched in that globalism. They like the idea of that. And that's something that Americans should not be involved. That should be bipartisan. All Americans should be against globalism, but it seems like no one really is understanding or comprehending what is exactly going on, because the mainstream media is suppressing, as well as the social media sites. And I'll have more news on that on Saturday. It's going to be a huge episode. Don't miss it. So what I have here just to end is just a cool little I guess a happy thing to end it here. I have a Jewish scientist. I'm going to try to find her name. Maman, her last name is. And she expects by 2025 that it'll be cost effective to have UD LED lights that will work as a 99.9% disinfectant against COVID-19 virus. Apparently, within 30 seconds of shining this UV LED light, it kills 99.9% of the COVID-19 virus. And that's a Tel Aviv research study. It is written by Mayan Jaff Hoffman. So yeah, that's really it. It'll hopefully over time this will become much more affordable for people to use it in a safe manner and be able to disinfect surfaces. So we're not living with, if COVID-19 leaves, now we're not living with a new virus. Or a strain of COVID. Like now we're making a big deal at this point because we have strains coming from the UK that are different from the original COVID-19, and people are saying the COVID-19 vaccination is supposed to work in congruence and still able to battle that new strain. And I'm not really, because I think it's because it is an mRNA vaccination, which apparently I think has never been done before. I don't know the logistics exactly, but I just hope that there is not another big government shutdown because of a new strand of COVID-19. That's what I'm hoping for. I don't know how long the government and the media is going to ride this one out, really. So that being said, that concludes this video. I greatly appreciate everyone for tuning in. Please like, share, subscribe, let people know about the podcast. Drop the mic on people. Try to inform them about what's going on. I learned all this on the Federalist Files podcast. Mike D'Amato, drop the mic on people. So greatly appreciate everyone for tuning in. Please make sure you listen to this weekend special. It's going to be it's going to be, as Trump would say, it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. So thank you. I will see everyone this weekend.